And a new straw poll found that people who were in attendance would like to see President Trump back on the ballot in 2024. Let's check in with our own White House correspondent, Emerald Robinson, for the latest. Emerald, what are you hearing? Obviously, plenty of excitement, the grassroots coming together to continue this tradition of conservatives gathering to set that tempo for what the conservative movement will be moving forward.
Sure, but there's also, Joe, yes, the grassroots, maybe the voting base are coming together, and we'll talk more about that straw poll that indicates that the voting base is largely with former President Donald Trump in the Republican Party. But there is a continuing schism that is even more defined as of this weekend between the GOP establishment and this Trumpian or Trump conservative movement. In fact, the former president didn't hold back on certain Republicans in his own party. He continued to hammer the GOP establishment.
The Democrats are terrible in policy, but they're very vicious and they're smart. And they stick together. They don't have Mitt Romneys and little Ben Sasses and Bill Cassidy. How about Bill Cassidy? He campaigns in the great state of Louisiana. He campaigns that he's Trump's friend. Every ad has Trump in it. Trump, 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 Trump. And then he votes to impeach me.
Now, the president's remarks nearly coincides with the GOP chairwoman, Ronna McDaniel, also coming under fire from Republican voters or many in the Republican base for what they say was a failure to act legally on the legal representation part for the former president, both ahead and post November 3rd, in regards to those questions over mail-in ballots and the legitimacy of the rules that were put in place due to the coronavirus pandemic. Now, as I said, former President Donald Trump still remains the most popular Republican in the party so far, as is evidenced in that straw poll from the Texas CPAC convention this week. If Donald Trump is in the race, according to participants who were there at the convention, 70% of them would back Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis came in second at 28%. Now, if the former president is not in the race, then it is overwhelmingly the Florida Governor DeSantis who is the favorite amongst those GOP voters who were there. Now, the former president didn't just take aim at those in his own party. He also took aim at the top Democrat right now, that being President Joe Biden, and especially his handling of the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. The former president suggesting that he would have handled it much differently.
He's leaving behind billions and billions of dollars of equipment. I told these generals, I want every nail brought back home. I want the tanks brought back home. I want it all brought back home. And instead, the Taliban is now parading around with our weapons that Joe Biden allowed them to capture. It's a disgrace. But with all of that being said, we should get out. 21 years is enough.
And Joe and Heather, that confirms what we talked about at the end of last week when we asked how would the former president have possibly handled this differently, given that he had gotten the potential to see through the decision he made in his term in with the withdrawal of troops, and that would have been to not leave the infrastructure, all the equipment that they had put in Afghanistan there from the United States, that they would have maintained that infrastructure under a Trump presidency. Heather, Joe.
All right. Thank you very much, Emerald. Joining us now to discuss President Trump's appearance at CPAC over the weekend is advisor to former President Trump, Bruce LeVell. Bruce, wow, he was fired up for sure. I mean, I was watching it and he was, I mean, not pulling any punches. In terms of going after establishment Republicans, I do want to pull this back up, listen to it, and get your response to some of what he said.
The Democrats are terrible in policy, but they're very vicious and they're smart and they stick together. They don't have Mitt Romneys and little Ben Sasses and Bill Cassidy. How about Bill Cassidy? He campaigns in the great state of Louisiana. He campaigns that he's Trump's friend. Every ad has Trump in it. Trump, 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 Trump. And then he votes to impeach me.
So what was your take on that? I mean, was he throwing out a warning? Is that what he was doing?
Okay. Thanks for having me. Let me just start it off with this quote in my right here, what I'm about to say right here on your show.
Yeah.
Donald J. Trump, former President Trump, okay, will be, quote, the next 47th president of these United States of America, quote, right here on your show. We'll start off just like that, Heather and Joe. But listen,
No.
you saw the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
You cannot, under no circumstances, go on a ballot and pretend. I call it the great pretenders before on your show with you and Bob. I said, you can't go out there pretending America First candidate, calling all America First candidates, essentially is what the president's saying at CPAC. You have to come out all unconditionally, America First, putting the people's business first. They thought just because President Biden was here in office, that they were just going to come out and say, well, he's gone. We're going to come back to establish with business as usual. No, sir, no, ma'am, on this show. It's not going to happen.
Well,
you have to have the America First agenda at hand to get back on any ballot, no matter where you're serving in this country.
Well, Bruce, to that specific point, you talk about this need to put America first. It seems as if the Biden administration thought that simply not being Trump would be enough to maintain their power, maintain their authority with the American people. We've now seen nuclear silos being dug in China. We've now seen Russia hack the entire planet. 17 countries compromised with this latest hack, 1,000 countries nationwide. It seems as if the world is in complete and utter disarray, and the president of these United States, currently Joe Biden, said that the greatest threat facing the homeland is white supremacy. In fact, President Trump spoke a little bit about this Democrat obsession with race. Want to play that side and then get your actual feedback?
Well,
The Democrat obsession with race is only dragging us backward into the past, and it is bringing our country down to a point where even China and Russia are lecturing us on human rights, race, and they're doing it in a very humiliating fashion.
Now, Bruce, talk to us about that, because the president points Trump. You got the Uyghurs over there in China being dragged off into the largest containment of an ethnic minority group since the Holocaust. How do we get this message out there?
Yeah, well, we need more shows like Newsmax. You know, I hate to say it, guys, but y'all know I saw this going on when they tried to you know, for example, take candidate Trump in 2015 and call him a racist when he's been out 40 years and no one's ever brought that up. And they continued this lie, and it's morphed into this giant of a monster of the biggest lie ever told. And it's so sad because it's putting on the backs of the great men and women of this great country to push this race narrative, to conquer and divide us, to call us that we're divided by races when the America First movement is not race, it's human race, one blood, one nation, under God. This is what this Reformation is, Brother Joe is. This is not a Trump movement. Right. This is an America movement. And that's what he's always said. We, not me, we. And this is who we really are. But it's a travesty what's going on, because we have our foreign adversaries putting the game on us and conquering and dividing us. So listen, man, look, I get emotional about this stuff because I know it's a lie. It's the biggest lie ever told, from the impeachment process to trying to divide us on race. And it's unfortunate because the mainstream media and the big tech are all in on this, and they're the ones that's causing this great divide.
Let's talk a little bit more, Bruce, and I'll let you catch your breath for a second, because let's talk about big tech, because that's the other problem. Silencing, what America First really is about, silencing some of these issues so that people just think a certain way. President Trump didn't forget to mention his lawsuit against big tech in that regard. Listen to this.
We are taking Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, and the other Silicon Valley billionaires to federal court, and we will keep on fighting until we have stopped this assault on our liberties and until we have restored the sacred right to freedom of speech for every single American.
Zuckerbucks.
Yeah.
Well, listen. In light of that, let me give you the great optimism where we're headed with this. we're going to prevail. We, the people, we're going to prevail in court, because here's the great thing about this great country. All the cancel culture, all the trying to suppress and shut us down and not get our voices heard is going to spur American ingenuity. You're going to see some other great social media companies are going to rise out. I want to say the ashes, but rise up. You see Getter trending. There's other ones, stay tuned, that are coming. So this is actually going to be healthy. I know it sounds kind of weird, but my optimism is when someone shuts you down, that's how I started my company 28 years ago, you open up something bigger and better. So this is where the optimism is going to come out of this lawsuit. Heather and Joe, you heard it right here on your show. We're going to see more competition, more messaging is going to come out, and people are going to start scratching their heads, said, you know what? I'm tired of being lied to. I want free speech to really actually flow, whether I like it or dislike it. So I'm very optimistic on that part, what's going to come out of this lawsuit.
Well, I think to that point that sometimes, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. We've seen crime skyrocketing, children being shot dead in the street, precipitous increase in crime, places like Chicago, New York City, Oakland, everywhere in between. We are
Atlanta.
a nation domestically in disarray. We saw, we can pull those up, the straw poll for President Trump. Typically, that straw poll is the kiss of death. In many ways, for many candidates, whoever wins that straw poll rarely ever actually goes on to be the nominee, much less the president. Talk to us about why you're so convinced that this is a different day and a different story, and the American people are finally saying, perhaps, in his own words, Trump was, in fact, right about everything.
Well, like you said, Joe, earlier, the numbers don't lie. And even some of my liberal Democrat friends, yes, I have friends, liberal Democrat friends, is the fact that they're starting to see, okay, were we better off in 4 years than we are now? Did we have the imminent threats from our foreign adversaries from across the seas, and looking at the numbers as it relates to our inflation, looking at the chaos, looking at the fact that sitting mayors in Portland as well as in Atlanta tried to push back and deny help from the federal government, from President Trump. And you saw Mayor Lightwood over in Chicago went over there quietly and begged President Biden, can you help us over here, when they denied all this? And this is another reason why. Good point, Joe. That's why Mayor Bottoms is not running for re-election here in Atlanta, allowing the autonomous zone, caving into the woke. My good friend over in Portland for 30 years in the colored stone business, he had to shut down because the autonomous zone, because they allowed this craziness to come in their cities and take over, and now they're seeing the repercussions of what happened. So where we're going with this, the liberals and the American people are scratching their heads like, well, my God, we didn't really like him, but he was right. He was right. And this is what's going to give this president, former president, I call him President Trump, favor to be the next, quote, 47th president of these United States of America, right here on Newsmax, Joe and Heather.
He issued a statement a short time ago regarding the straw poll at CPAC. One line, I'm sure you saw this, Bruce. He said 98% approval rating at CPAC, the highest ever by far, a new record. So it does sound like he's in it to win it in 2024.
And just real quick, Heather, not everybody at CPAC were these diehard conservatives. There were some moderates and some Democrats there, just for the record.
All right. Well, Bruce LeVell, thank you as always for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Joe.
All right, my friend.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.